Then, a realization struck him. He thought of Dwayne, and knew he had to make the call immediately. He would inform him that they had located the coveted fighter's set, because if Dwayne arrived for a confrontation, even a figure like Dong Ming would be forced to show a measure of respect. A short time elapsed, and the protagonist was sitting with Shin in the waiting room when the mayor and Dwayne appeared, walking together. They rushed toward them, asking what their business was there. Shin was taken aback, as it seemed the mayor and Dwayne were already acquainted with the protagonist. Both men, radiating fury, turned to the woman, leaving her paralyzed with fear as she stammered, asking why they were looking at her with such intensity. But her eyes soon found Mr. Wang, who looked utterly dejected, like a man who had already lost everything. She asked what had happened, but his only response was a hollow whisper that it was all finished. Dong Ming then addressed the protagonist, asking if he was expecting them to offer an apology. Feng considered it a futile gesture, as neither of them would offer a sincere apology anyway. There was no way for them to redeem themselves. At that moment, the mayor pointed an accusatory finger at the two of them, ordering them to be gone at once. They were both stunned by his command. Enraged, Mr. Wang swiftly struck the woman. He snarled that this entire disaster was her fault. Dong Ming, disgusted by the spectacle, signaled the guards to have them removed from the premises. Afterward, the group proceeded to a private VIP room. As they all took their seats, Shin began to serve tea, and the mayor watched her with a keen eye. He observed Feng's favorable impression of the young woman, and felt a sense of relief, thankful that the reputation of the trading exchange had not been completely destroyed. Shin, in turn, looked at the protagonist, thinking how incredible he was, able to smile and chat so casually, with such prominent figures. Smiling warmly, Dong Ming assured Shin that she had been deeply wronged, urging her to dedicate herself fully, promising that the trading exchange would handsomely reward her efforts in the days to come. Flustered, she thanked him, vowing to pour her heart into her work, while Feng turned to the mayor, apologizing for the trouble he'd caused. He had traveled a great distance, but Dong Ming quickly insisted he think nothing of it. The city's problems were his own, and he stressed that without the intervention of Feng and Shin, the consequences would have been dire. The entire city of Long Bofu could have been left defenseless, its protectors, the Prada, utterly vanquished. Changing the subject, Dong Ming recalled noticing Feng intently studying the rare items catalog earlier. He then inquired if there was something specific he required, to which Feng chuckled, admitting that he was indeed searching for something unique. He leaned in slightly, asking if the mayor had ever heard of the legendary Final Relic, his question hanging in the air. Stunned by the prodigy's words, the mayor asked him to clarify what he meant by Final Relic, a term that also ignited a spark of curiosity in Duan. Feng feigned surprise at their ignorance, quickly brushing it off as nothing important. He concocted a story on the spot, claiming he had seen a random mention of it online the day before, and simply thought it sounded intriguing. In truth, his mind raced back to the previous day, when he had examined the skill book gifted to him by his teacher. This tome was titled Spiritual Energy Powder, a common skill used by mages for a temporary surge of power during intense combat. Yet, a profound sense of mystery surrounded the book, making him wonder what kind of forbidden spell it would transform into in his hands. As he contemplated this, an otherworldly glow began to emanate from the book's pages, and he made the fateful decision to absorb its power. At that very moment, an intense, blinding light flared to life on his forehead. The system's voice echoed in his mind, announcing that he had acquired a new passive skill, Absolute Darkness Convergence. Its purpose was extraordinary: to absorb the residual dark energy from the Final Relic and convert it into his own immense power. A wave of intrigue washed over him, his thoughts consumed by a single burning question: what exactly was this Final Relic? He had never encountered the term before, and this time, the system remained ominously silent, offering no further explanation, leaving him to ponder his next move. But a wave of exhaustion washes over him. He decides to surrender to sleep, figuring the problem could wait for another day, as it held no immediate use for him. His mind drifted back to that day, recalling Dominic's hurried departure as he urged them to head for Dragon's Crest City. Dominic had hastily promised to cover all their expenses, grabbing his flying scroll in a rush. With a flash of magic, he soared back towards the city, leaving the two of them to watch his silhouette disappear into the sky. Finn suggested they grab a bite to eat, but Dylan insisted they come over to his new place instead. Arriving at Dylan's residence, Finn was stunned by its sheer size, questioning if the mayor was truly footing the bill for such luxury. Dylan explained the city's policy. Anyone who reached the 4th change level and chose to stay in Silver Spring City was guaranteed special treatment. He then generously offered the place to Finn, saying he could easily find another residence for himself. Finn casually plopped onto the sofa, dismissing the offer with a confident grin, vowing to earn his own fortune and buy a house nearby. With the clear intention of becoming neighbors, Dylan then told Finn that if he ever needed funds, he shouldn't hesitate to ask. He offered a loan, but Finn quickly cut him off, his pride stinging as he insisted he didn't need the charity. In his mind, he pictured the mountain of crystals he had amassed from selling equipment recently. He reasoned he could easily exchange them for enough cash to purchase a mansion, making the whole affair a non-issue. But a second thought gave him pause. Cashing in now would severely deplete his crystal reserves, which he might desperately need later. The risk of being short on resources after such a lavish purchase seemed too great, so he wisely decided to hold off for a while. After they had talked for some time, tea was served, and Finn immediately took a long, satisfying sip. A feeling of pure relaxation spread through him. The tea was exceptional. Dylan explained they had a personal chef on staff. He'd even called ahead to let the chef know they were coming, a convenience that Finn found immensely satisfying. Just then, the serene atmosphere was broken by the ringing of Dylan's phone. He answered, greeting the mayor of Silver Spring City. However, Zhang's tone shifted, admitting there was a matter that might prove to be a slight inconvenience. He revealed that a special investigation team, dispatched from the higher-ups, was scrutinizing the recent calamities that had plagued Chinyu City. As part of their inquiry, they wished to speak with him. This news caught Duan off guard, his gaze instinctively shifting to the protagonist. He instantly realized the investigation could entangle Feng, and decided it was best to gauge his thoughts before proceeding. Composing himself, he informed the mayor that his schedule for the day was unfortunately full. Zhang graciously accepted the excuse. He simply requested that Duan inform him of his availability in the coming days. Later, after relaying the mayor's message, the protagonist was puzzled. Feng inquired about the nature of this investigation group, admitting he had never encountered such an organization before. In another part of the city, a shadowy warrior materialized, remarking on the unsettling aura that permeated the streets. The source of this tension was a high-level meeting where several influential figures were gathered, discussing a mysterious benefactor. The question hung in the air: did anyone present have knowledge of this enigmatic great boss? Jing was the first to respond, stating she did not. Bang Wei, looking utterly captivated by the mystery, pressed further, questioning how rumors of this figure could exist if no one had any information. How could whispers circulate that this great boss had single-handedly saved the city? Jing clarified that the speculation stemmed from the secret area invasion. She explained that the incursion had abruptly ceased, and simultaneously, all the invading mutants had been mysteriously eradicated. Visibly stressed, he shot back, questioning her logic. The danger level of secret area incursions was notoriously unpredictable. He argued they couldn't possibly use that as a credible basis for such a grand claim without a proper, thorough investigation. He then drove his point home, reminding them of another disaster within the secret area, one involving 2 separate attacks of king-level magnitude or greater. He demanded to know what, precisely, the so-called Great Boss had done about that. Overwhelmed by his reasoning, Jing lowered her head in deep thought. A wave of anxiety washed over Qi Wei, who knew the truth. To shield Feng, Jing had leveraged her own authority. She had painstakingly altered any piece of information that could possibly lead back to Feng, effectively shouldering the immense pressure of the entire incident herself. At that very moment, the tension was shattered as Mayor Zheng burst through the doors, announcing that he had just concluded a call with Duan. But when the message arrived that the adventurer couldn't attend because he was busy, Victor's composure shattered into pure rage. He seethed, voicing his contempt for these guildless wanderers who acted like unchecked vigilantes. They strut around as if the world belongs to them, he roared, slamming his fist on the table with a deafening crack. He immediately demanded to be placed in charge of the investigation, and after the meeting, he made his way to the sealed-off sector. As he approached the shimmering portal, 2 smiling guards respectfully intercepted him. He greeted them smoothly, identifying himself as the lead of the new investigative team. He explained he was there to enter the zone and begin his assessment, and the guards quickly bowed, stating there was no problem at all. In fact, they admitted that his presence made them feel immensely more secure, eagerly gesturing for him to proceed. The moment he stepped through the gateway, he was assaulted by the palpable residue of immense dark energy. He murmured to himself that although he had been here before, the sheer scale of the annihilation was still staggering. A sliver of admiration pierced through his thoughts, making him wonder in awe. Just what kind of force would be necessary to completely obliterate a pocket dimension, he thought, gazing upon the desolate ruins. He could feel it. The residual dark energy was so pure, so overwhelmingly potent. In the face of such an existence, any so-called mysterious great boss was utterly insignificant. It was like comparing an anthill to a leviathan. A jolt of absolute ecstasy shot through him. This place. It is truly a magnificent stage, he shouted into the emptiness, raising his hand to the sky. In response to his gesture, a sinister demon clawed its way out of the shadows, a puppet bound to his will. A wicked laugh rumbled from his chest as he felt its power. "So this," he whispered, "is the might of a true king." The air thrummed with corrupting energy, and Victor felt an insatiable hunger to make every last drop of it his own. At that very same moment, back in Dwayne's house, our hero was still completely engrossed in his video game. As he was lodging a complaint with the system, an unexpected alert suddenly materialized before his eyes. It informed him that the final relic had been located, a revelation that left the protagonist utterly stunned. He sensed a profound shift in the air, a mysterious connection weaving itself through his aura, hinting that something significant was unfolding. By concentrating his will, the psychic link sharpened, becoming a clear beacon that allowed him to pinpoint its exact origin. Finn snatched his shirt from the chair, pulling it on as Dylan materialized beside him, questioning his sudden departure. The protagonist explained he was just stepping out for a moment, then bolted from the room, calling back for Dylan to take over the game for him. Finn flagged down a cab, his eyes glued to the GPS as he surmised the surge of energy was emanating from the vicinity of the ominous cemetery. He could feel it through their burgeoning connection. The relic was in motion, right at the entrance to the sinister cemetery. The perimeter guards watched in horror as a demon clawed its way through a portal, their voices crackling over the radio as they alerted their superiors. They reported that an unidentified monstrous entity had appeared, their bodies racked with tremors as they stared at the creature. They could only stammer, "What in heaven's name is that thing?" Realizing with dawning horror that Brian Way had fused with the abomination, the guards screamed for backup, paralyzed by fear, as citywide blockades were erected to contain the monstrous threat and prevent any unforeseen incidents. Officers ordered everyone to halt, warning of the imminent danger ahead, just as the taxi driver regretfully informed the protagonist of the situation. "We can't get past the blockade," the driver said, but our hero simply replied, "This is fine, I'll get out here." After paying the fare, he stepped out and immediately noticed that the powerful presence had momentarily shifted its position. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the sinister cemetery, the demonic creature continued its destructive and uncontrolled rampage. It laid waste to everything in its path, all while Brian Way's desperate cries for help echoed from within the monstrous form. Just then, Jin arrived on the scene, flanked by Professor Charles Way and another colleague, all three charging headlong towards the monster. Their advance, however, came to an abrupt halt, their faces masks of sheer terror at the unbelievable sight before them as they questioned what was happening. Sometime later, in the quiet aftermath of the battle within the sinister cemetery, Jin rested wearily in Professor Charles Way's arms, who is trying to heal her. She struggles to speak, silenced by the severity of her wounds. The professor surmises that the equipment Finn had provided must have drastically shortened her spell's cooldown period. This allowed her to cast the support magic far more quickly, yet the situation remains critical, as not even the formidable Jenna, with all her might, could stop the beast. Trembling from head to toe, Jenna forces herself to her feet. She desperately asks where the creature has gone. Kai delivers the grim news. It was heading for the city center. Mayor John had already summoned aid from Ken, but there was no telling how long it would take for him to arrive. By that point, it might already be too late. Jenna takes a ragged breath, realizing Ken is likely as powerful as she is. Alone, he would be no match for the monster. Their only remaining hope rests with the person currently in pursuit. This would be their last chance. Elsewhere, the creature carves a path of absolute destruction, its rage unchecked. In the midst of this fury, Finn arrives, his eyes immediately locking onto the monstrous being. He recognizes that the final relic has grown to an immense size. The demonic beast senses his presence and turns its gaze upon him. As if sizing up its prey, he wonders if he'll be forced to use other forbidden spells to bring it down. However, while he contemplates his next move, the creature wastes no time, lunging at him with its full, terrifying power. Aiming a devastating strike for his head, our hero remains utterly motionless, waiting until the very last second to act. He instantly materializes his dark shield, flawlessly blocking the creature's ferocious attack. The beast breaks out in a cold sweat, its mind reeling in disbelief at the impossible sight before it. How could a mere mortal wield such incredible power? At that exact moment, a system message appears before him. It informs him that the final relic has been detected, and asks if the protagonist wishes to absorb it. Finn accepts without a moment's hesitation, knowing that close physical contact was necessary for the absorption. He unleashes a fearsome power towards the creature, absorbing it instantly as it shrieks in agony from the process. An influx of fragmented memories and locations were assimilated into his being, granting him an additional 100 total attribute points. Leo felt a surge of satisfaction. Even for a prestigious 3-star class, advancing from level 0 to the third transformation, rarely awards such a generous amount of skill points to allocate so freely. However, a seed of unease began to sprout, as it seemed that, along with the raw power, he had absorbed something else entirely strange. Disjointed images now flickered through his mind. At that very moment, Dwayne appeared, demanding to know what had transpired. Leo simply gestured toward the fallen creature. He claimed it had emerged from nowhere and that he had dispatched it immediately. Dwayne's eyes then fell upon Victor, lying unconscious on the ground. He deduced that our hero was also responsible for subduing the man. Dwayne was intrigued by the chaotic aftermath, recalling the mayor's recent warning of a monster invasion. He wondered if these men were part of some nefarious cult, trying to piece the puzzle together. And although he could accept that Leo had somehow managed to eliminate the monstrous threat, he couldn't explain the state of the ambient energy, as it bore no resemblance to the after-effects of a powerful spell. So, how did he do it? Leo, with a slight smile, clapped Dwayne on the shoulder. He asked him to handle the aftermath, noting that his arrival was perfectly timed. Dwayne simply affirmed that he understood. Entrusting the scene to him, Leo then launched into the sky, soaring away at maximum speed. Dwayne was left utterly astonished by this prodigious velocity, wondering if Leo was merely a mage. That kind of speed surpassed many dedicated combat classes. He shouted after Leo's retreating form, proclaiming that he was truly incredible. Sometime later, after the dust had settled from the creature's attack, within the walls of Blackstone Penitentiary, Victor was incarcerated, having confessed that he had tried to control the beast. Kai explained that Victor had discovered the creature in a secret dimension by sheer chance and had managed to harness its dark power for himself. Under the guise of the investigation, he secretly channeled the power of darkness directly into the hidden dimension. But when the creature spiraled out of control, the mayor was unexpectedly pleased, declaring the chaos to be magnificent. He believed it was proof that a mysterious, powerful guardian was maintaining the city's ultimate security from the shadows. Jane smiled, as did Professor Willow, both proud that their student was orchestrating events so masterfully. The mayor then turned to Dwayne, asking if by some incredible chance he had ever met this legendary guardian. He calmly replied that he had, being fortunate enough to encounter him once, a statement that left the women beside him utterly shocked. John then approached Dwayne, asking if he could possibly convey a request to their mysterious protector. If this great guardian would be willing to settle permanently in Chinyu City, they would spare no expense to accommodate his every need. Dwayne explained that the guardian was a discreet figure who rarely appeared, suggesting it would be best to abandon that hope. He inwardly reflected on how he and the protagonist had successfully fabricated this phantom guardian to divert all suspicion. A guardian who didn't exist was the perfect shield. Without evidence, they could never launch an investigation into the mayor. The mayor lamented the situation, noting what a pity it was, as powerful figures like the guardian are admired by everyone. Dwayne then added a crucial layer to the myth, clarifying that the mysterious guardian has family right here in Chinyu. For that reason, he would always give special care to this place, asking them not to worry, but in return, he demanded not to be disturbed. Jane was initially puzzled by Dwayne's elaborate story, but then, a wave of understanding washed over her as all the pieces clicked into place. As for Professor Willow, she began to wonder if this powerful guardian might, by some chance, be a relative of Finn's. Far from the political maneuvering, back at our protagonist's home, he was soaking in a bath, contemplating the true nature of the Final Relic. He concluded that it was not an artifact at all, but the crystallized remains left by demon kings who had fallen in those hidden realms. He theorized that the vivid images he had seen were not illusions, but actual memory fragments from the lives of those very demon kings. Memories that were absorbed into his very being along with the relic's power. A realization that sparked a deep and unsettling intrigue within him. The title of Demon King held no appeal for him, leaving him to question what ultimate purpose these fragments could possibly serve. However, a new thought began to surface, an inkling that these shards might hold an unexpected, crucial value. He contemplated how the relentless accumulation of dark power periodically strengthened these secret dimensions. Should an invaded timeline lack the strength to resist, the entire world would be plunged into absolute chaos. It was painfully clear that in their own reality, the evolutionary path of the awakened was dangerously incomplete. Only a select few ever succeeded in reaching the fourth level. And what's more, the very professions of the awakened seemed to be far from their most ideal and powerful forms. A chilling worry began to creep into his heart. The knowledge gleaned from the Demon King's memories painted a grim future if things were allowed to continue on their current path. Humanity would face a single, unavoidable fate, and even if he managed to save himself, a life in a world teeming with monsters was no life at all. But fortunately, a sliver of hope remained. Their world was not the only one to suffer the horrifying invasion from the secret dimensions across time and space. Some realities had successfully managed to repel the invasion. If he could just collect more of these fragments, he could sift through them, selecting the useful experiences and strategies, which would be profoundly effective. This knowledge was, after all, far beyond their current understanding. Improper handling could unleash entirely unpredictable consequences. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the ringing of his phone. Feng answered it. A light chuckle escaped him as he asked Yua if she had something important for him. She invited him to dinner that evening. She made it clear his attendance was non-negotiable. They were celebrating her successful completion of the S-class mission, and with it, her transition to the Vanguard Shadow class was finalized. Feng accepted without a moment's hesitation. He told her warmly, how could he possibly refuse an invitation, especially when it came from her? His answer clearly delighted her. She told him to check his phone, promising to send the location right away. Upon transmitting their coordinates to Finn, Elara and Leo finally step out from the transformative chamber. They are immediately met with a celebratory explosion of confetti, thrown by their waiting guildmates. Amidst the congratulations for their advancement to the second level, the onlookers are struck with absolute amazement. It was almost unheard of for mages so young to reach the second level. Taking advantage of the moment, Leo invites Elara to dinner. He proudly announces that he's already secured a private room at the finest restaurant the city has to offer. However, Elara's expression turns apologetic as she explains she already has plans, urging them to have fun without her. She then pivots, announcing her role as the host for a significant event taking place the very next day. As she requests everyone's presence, Leo interjects, questioning if they shouldn't prioritize their recovery first. He reminds her of the immense toll they endured during the arduous transformation trial. Elara simply insists that her matter is critically important and cannot be postponed, bidding a swift goodbye as everyone watches her depart. Leo's face tightens with irritation. They had barely reached the second level, and a divide was already forming between them. The guild's cleric quickly intervenes, attempting to soothe him and asking him not to speak with such frustration. She reminds him softly, "You know Elara. She is the kind of person who must have an exceptionally important reason for this." Annoyed, he turns to the entire group and asks pointedly if they are not weary of constantly chasing after her. His sharp question leaves them all taken aback, caught off guard by his sudden bitterness. Leo continues, explaining that now that she has finished her transition to S-class, she has also unlocked a new, hidden class. His words make it painfully obvious that the gap between her power and theirs will only continue to grow. The cleric looks utterly shocked by his revelation. While everyone's gaze follows Elara's distant, retreating form, Leo quietly comments that his greatest fear is that one day, she will disconnect from their guild entirely. Time passes, and night descends upon the city, finding us at the restaurant where the protagonist and Elara had arranged to meet for their celebration. Feng's eyes widened at the sight of the roasted lamb, marveling that such a fine restaurant was not outrageously expensive. He declared that all their dishes were absolutely delicious, urging her to taste it without delay. Still radiating delight, he confessed that this wonderful experience was only possible because he had followed her. Yue quickly shifted the praise, thanking him for giving her the emblem and explaining how much it had truly helped her. While he savored a piece of lamb, her words piqued his curiosity, cutting through his enjoyment. He wondered aloud if the emblem had unlocked a new hidden class, but his mind drifted to the memories of the Demon King. In those visions, it was revealed that the awakened individuals and their professions in this time and space were incomplete. They had not yet reached their ideal form, and he pondered if these emblems were a key to achieving that ultimate state. Yue looked at him intently, asking if he, by any chance, knew the origin of those powerful emblems. Feng let out a light laugh, admitting he wasn't entirely sure about them, which only deepened the frustration on her face. She sighed, wishing they could simply purchase them, as she would immediately give one to him and to the other members of her team. He felt a warmth spread through him, realizing his friend hadn't changed at all. Whenever something good came her way, she always considered how it could benefit him and the others she cared about. Yue told him not to worry, assuring him that she would handle the search for emblems, but pleaded with him not to abandon his training. She stressed that in such a dangerous world, having extra skills for self-preservation was always invaluable. She made it clear that once she discovered an emblem suitable for him, he too might awaken an entirely new class. Feng started teasing Yue, playfully complaining that training alone was difficult when having her as a friend to protect him was more than enough. She was instantly taken aback, her voice rising as she told him to stop joking around. She insisted it was a serious matter, but as she spoke, a sudden, unnerving pain shot through her body. Feng's playful expression vanished, replaced by alarm as he asked what was wrong, watching her clutch her arm in discomfort. She waved off his concern, telling him not to worry, as she had only been slightly injured while finishing a mission. Leo immediately offered to heal her, but she replied that she had already received treatment. She specified that it was an S-class mission, explaining that the boss had dealt a significant amount of damage. Consequently, she would need some time to recover. Leo was intrigued, his mind pondering the true difficulty of an S-class trial. At that very moment, Leo's phone began to ring. He answered, and an unfamiliar voice asked if he was, by any chance, Leo Feng. He chose not to confirm, instead asking the caller what they wanted and who they were. He immediately sensed an aggressive undercurrent in the way the person spoke, a tone that put him on edge. However, the caller arrogantly stated that Leo didn't need to know who he was. He just demanded to know where Leo had acquired the emblem. Leo's patience instantly evaporated, thoroughly annoyed with this mysterious man. He hung up, leaving the man talking to himself. Elara noticed her friend's sudden stress and asked what had happened. He explained that the caller had demanded to know where the emblem came from. She was startled to hear this. She insisted that she hadn't told anyone outside their circle about the emblem. Leo simply picked up his delicious lamb to continue eating. He urged her to let it go so they could eat and drink in peace, but then noticed the guy on the other end still hadn't hung up. Picking up the phone once more, he was met with the sound of furious shouting. The man was yelling, demanding to know how Leo dared to leave him talking to himself. He made it clear that Leo would pay dearly for what he had done. Leo listened to all the blustering nonsense with a calm expression. Then, his demeanor turned serious. He glanced at Elara, realizing it would be better not to do anything that might draw attention. He ended the call for good. After eating and chatting for a long while, the tension finally faded. The two left the restaurant, happy and content. The protagonist placed a hand on his stomach, with a satisfied groan. He declared he was completely full and had never tasted such incredible lamb. She felt a wave of happiness hearing him say that, but her expression quickly shifts to one of concern, as she asks if he needed a ride. He offers a warm smile, explaining it wasn't necessary before bidding her farewell. However, shortly after returning home, he pushes the door open, feeling the drowsy weight of a heavy meal, only for the feeling to be shattered by a startling discovery. His eyes widen as he takes in the scene. His entire house has been ransacked into a state of utter chaos. At that moment, a figure calmly approaches. The man asks why Mr. Feng had taken so long, causing the protagonist's relaxed demeanor to vanish in an instant. Feng's voice turns sharp as he asks if this was the person who had called him earlier. The blonde man simply breaks into a cold laugh. He confirms that it was, reminding the protagonist that he had promised to pay him a visit. He makes it chillingly clear that if Feng had just answered honestly from the very beginning, none of this would have been necessary. Feng then demands to know who sent him. But the blonde man merely lets out a wicked, mocking laugh. He questions how a lowly awakened like the protagonist dares to speak to him in such a manner. He then sneers, asking if Feng never had a mentor to teach him some basic manners, the kind of proper respect one should always show to their superiors. However, at that very moment, another man materializes from the shadows behind the protagonist, arm raised and ready to strike. But Feng moves in a blur, dodging the attack and countering with a sharp elbow that smashes into the man's nose, forcing him to drop his dagger. Feng coolly adjusts his stance as the assailant slumps down the wall, completely unconscious. The blonde man's face contorts in terror. He stares in disbelief, trying to process what in the world had just happened, while the protagonist lets out a low, menacing chuckle. Feng tells him to show some respect and calm down, but the intruder begins to sweat profusely, his composure shattered. A wave of worry washes over him as he recalls that the intelligence report clearly identified the protagonist as a mere one-star novice. He then struggles to understand how a 3-star assassin could have been taken down by a simple mage, defeated with bare hands, no less. As this impossible thought races through his mind, he instinctively grips a shuriken, his eyes locked on Feng with a newfound fear. He noted with grim satisfaction that all his stats had surged past the 100 mark, and both his reaction, speed and perception range had undergone a dramatic enhancement, making it clear he could resolve many situations without resorting to magic. As a test, he flung a shuriken at one of the intruders, but the man sidestepped it with surprising ease. Immediately witnessing the protagonist's terrifying composure, the blonde accomplice began to panic. Realizing the tables had turned, he decided to retreat, bolting toward the balcony and leaping over in a desperate escape. However, a hand shot out, grabbing his leg midair and preventing his escape before slamming his face violently into the wall. After asserting his dominance, the protagonist commanded them to clean the entire mess they had created in his room. With a cold tone, he informed them they would also be covering the cost of the broken cabinet once their cleaning was finished. The blonde man later confirmed their task was done, informing him that all their belongings, including their very clothes, were now on the table. Feng crossed his arms, his gaze unwavering. "Good," he said flatly, "but I want to know who sent you." His face, a canvas of bruises, the thug confessed that it was Master Zhao Cheng from the Sovereign Lion Guild. He explained that the protagonist possessed a special emblem, a unique artifact that couldn't be found anywhere else. This was why they were hired to gather any information about it. Feng's interest was instantly piqued. He wondered if this was the same notorious mage from the US Guild. If that were the case, this kind of audacious move would not be surprising. A sinister excitement began to build within him. He mused that he wouldn't be gentle, as he still held a forbidden spell he had been eager to use, and he would reserve this special torment just for Zhao Cheng. In that moment, the protagonist activated his ability. The technique was known as the Shadow Ritual, a terrifying art that weaponized his mental fortitude to control the minds of others. It allowed him to manifest a powerful psychic projection, which he immediately aimed at the two helpless thugs. They erupted in screams of pure agony. Elsewhere, Zhao Cheng and the shield warrior were walking and talking, completely unaware. The warrior pressed Jace about the emblem, only to be met with a grave and chilling stare. Jace revealed he had already dispatched someone to find Nina Feng, adding a chilling ultimatum. If the protagonist failed to cooperate, he would subject him to a destiny more agonizing than death itself. The sheer coldness in his friend's voice left the warrior utterly aghast. He stammered, asking what might happen should Wayne Yue discover their plot. Jace inhaled deeply, steeling himself. "I can't afford to worry about that now," he declared. Breaking into a cold sweat, the warrior lamented how disastrously the mission had deviated from its plan. Zane Chung, however, found his mind replaying the mission's original design. He had planned to let the shield warrior face the boss first, to shatter Yuna's confidence and frighten her, setting the stage for his grand entrance as the heroic rescuer. But he had never fathomed that she would risk her very existence and somehow manage to vanquish the beast on her own. His reverie was shattered when a figure materialized from the shadows. It was Sean, the very operative he had sent. Jace, seeing the man he'd sent to gather intel on the protagonist, erupted in anger, demanding to know why he had appeared so covertly. He pressed further, questioning if he had successfully acquired the information that had been requested of him. But the protagonist, having seized control of the blonde man's body with his ability, simply asked, "Were you the ones who inflicted injury upon her?" The question hung in the air, leaving the two men completely stunned. Jace, however, was the first to react, stepping forward menacingly. He delivered a condescending slap to the man's face, warning him not to meddle before questioning if he had some sort of problem. In that instant, an overwhelming power surged from the protagonist. Enraged, his hands shot out, clamping around their necks with immense force. He lifted them, clear off the ground, his voice a low growl as he made it clear they did not deserve to exist in this world. "Not for hurting Yuna," he hissed, vowing their end would be anything but easy. As he spoke, sinister black flames erupted into existence. The ethereal fire quickly swarmed over them. The protagonist then coldly repeated the very words they had used against him earlier. "Something about a fate worse than death," he mocked, telling them to truly enjoy the sensation that was to come. He would burn them from the inside out, until nothing remained but cinders. With that, he allowed the flames to begin consuming the very body he now occupied. He reasoned that if they were all reduced to ash, not a single piece of evidence would remain. It was a flawless method for a clean disappearance. But he acknowledged that this situation was fraught with new dangers. His home was located in a public neighborhood, making it impossible to control the movements of high-level awakened individuals. While his own power meant he had little to fear from them directly, the true risk lay elsewhere. He couldn't possibly maintain a vigil at his home 24 hours a day, a fact he grimly accepted. His original intention was to probe the Demon King's memories to unearth vital information. By a stroke of luck, he hadn't yet begun the process. Had he been discovered by the awakened in such a state, the consequences would have been catastrophic. After carefully considering every angle, a new plan formed in his mind. Feng began to stretch, deciding he would temporarily stay at Duan's estate, a sensible choice given Duan's strength as a fourth transformation awakened. Furthermore, the security in that residential district was of a much higher standard, offering superior protection. Sometime later, Feng arrived at Duan's home and proceeded to explain the harrowing events that had just unfolded. A cold fury settled over Duan as he heard the tale, and he insisted that his friend get some much-needed rest. He vowed to personally investigate and uncover anyone else conspiring against Feng. To launch such a direct assault was an act of unforgivable audacity. Sensing his friend's mounting rage, Feng took a calming breath. He urged Duan to temper his anger, explaining there was no need for haste, before posing a critical question about any reliable alchemists he might know. Duan was momentarily stunned by the inquiry, asking what specific criteria he was looking for in an alchemist. Feng laid out his terms. The individual needed to be of a high caliber, utterly trustworthy, and preferably independent, with minimal affiliations. The fewer connections, the better. Duan fell into thought, admitting that while he knew a few alchemists of considerable skill, they had all already pledged their loyalty to large guilds. Feng immediately replied that such an arrangement would be unsuitable. He recalled a chilling memory he had absorbed, one in which the Demon King had personally executed several high-level alchemists, and the potions they could produce were of a quality that far surpassed the known standards of this world. Unfortunately, he couldn't decipher the intricate details, having only managed to copy the recipes left behind. He knew he needed to consult a professional, but he worried that alchemists tied to large guilds rarely had any autonomy. They were often bound by strict contracts, making information leaks a significant risk. And after the harsh lesson he'd learned, he had no desire to attract the attention of greedy opportunists ever again. Felix turned to Owen, asking if he could keep an eye out for a trustworthy expert, mentioning he would also inquire with others. Sometime later, Felix called Chloe, asking if she happened to know any alchemists. She replied with a confident yes. Just one, she clarified, but he's entirely reliable. Felix was taken aback, asking if she was absolutely certain. Chloe confirmed, explaining it was Sean White, the brother of their party's healer, and a highly skilled alchemist. She added that Sean had considered joining her guild, but he and another member, Jackson, simply couldn't see eye to eye. Because of their friction, negotiations stalled. She then asked if Felix was interested in meeting him. "I can arrange an introduction," she offered. Hearing Jackson's name again, Felix couldn't help but feel a sense of irony. He reflected on his friend's misfortune, being saddled with Jackson as a teammate. But in a strange twist, Jackson's difficult nature had just solved a major problem for him, ensuring he wouldn't cause any trouble this time. Chloe, her curiosity piqued, asked him, "Why on earth are you suddenly looking for an alchemist?" Felix explained that he had discovered some old family recipes and needed an expert to help him make sense of them. A flicker of suspicion crossed her face. "You found something at home again?" she pressed, causing Felix to let out a nervous laugh. "Let's just say I've been doing some deep cleaning lately," he deflected. Chloe asked him to wait a moment. She promised to set everything up as quickly as she could. Before long, the meeting was arranged. Felix arrived at the agreed-upon location and met the alchemist. After introducing himself, the alchemist did the same. He introduced himself as Sean Wei, asking Feng if he might be permitted to review the recipes he'd brought. Yuna and her friend appeared visibly frustrated. Her friend was particularly annoyed, having hoped for a chance to get closer to Feng, but her brother had dismissed her, leading Yuna to smile awkwardly, speculating that her friend's energetic personality was the cause. Meanwhile, the alchemist meticulously examined the formulas, noting that the listed ingredients were surprisingly ordinary. The preparation method, however, was a labyrinth of complexity, unlike anything he had ever witnessed before. Sean Wei then inquired if Feng knew the potion's effects, to which he replied that he'd heard it increased experience gain by 100%. The alchemist's jaw dropped at the staggering claim, explaining that typical experience elixirs, available on the market, could only boost experience by a maximum of 40%, and were notoriously expensive. He began to muse that if a potion capable of a 100% experience boost was real, then 1- and 2-star awakened individuals could achieve growth at an unprecedented speed. Feng smiled, acknowledging it was likely. He clarified, however, that he wasn't certain and couldn't easily inquire elsewhere, which is why he had come to resolve his doubts. Sean Wei turned to Feng, his expression intense, and requested that he wait just a moment. He announced he was going to conduct an immediate experiment upstairs, and as time passed, the three continued their conversation. Suddenly, a peculiar noise echoed from above, instantly silencing them as a shared look of concern passed between them. Wondering what was happening, Yuna's friend took the initiative, starting up the stairs to investigate the disturbance. Announcing her intent to check on the noise, she climbed, only to stop in her tracks as something leaped out in front of her. She quickly realized it was the experimental slime her brother kept, just as Yuna and Feng rushed up behind her to see what was wrong. In that instant, a blinding flash of fire erupted from the room, impacting the slime and leaving everyone stunned by the spectacle. They hurried towards the alchemist to see what had happened, discovering that the blast had come from him as he wore an expression of sheer ecstasy. He shouted that the potion had been a resounding success, a revelation that left the two girls completely and utterly baffled. Professor Allen approaches Finn, his eyes gleaming with unrestrained excitement. He reveals he tested a drop of the potion on a slime, confirming with sheer astonishment that the experience gain is boosted by a full 100%. A wave of triumph washes over Finn, realizing that if this recipe worked, the others in his possession were likely just as potent. In his ecstatic state, the alchemist unleashes another fireball, completely obliterating the test subject in a celebratory blast. His sister remarks wryly that Professor Allen cherishes his laboratory so much, he forbids even her from going upstairs. And yet, in his current frenzy, he's the one tearing the place apart all by himself. After Finn explains the nature of the miraculous potion to the girls, they erupt in excitement, asking if it truly doubles their experience rate. Finn gives a firm nod, confirming their hopes, but his expression quickly turns serious. The alchemist insists they maintain their silence, emphasizing that a discovery of this magnitude requires the utmost confidentiality. Professor Allen then turns to Finn, asking what his next move will be, because selling this concoction would surely bring an unimaginable fortune. He points out that in these perilous times, no one would possibly refuse an item that so dramatically increases their power. Finn mulls over the incredible potential, but his train of thought is broken by the chime of a new message on his phone. He asks for a moment. He glances down to see the notification is a message from Chloe, posted in their class group chat. She's relaying an official school announcement about a plan to take all third-year students to a secret training location. The facility is in a neighboring city, intended for preparation for the event next Monday, but the available space is extremely limited. Therefore, each class would be assigned different areas and time slots, with a plea for everyone to prepare accordingly and cooperate fully. Finn notices that following the announcement, the chat had already exploded with anxious messages from his classmates. They worried that with so many students in a confined space, the opportunities for gaining experience would be scarce. The complaints continued, bemoaning the lack of space and the absence of any experience-boosting potions for the event. As Finn absorbed their collective anxiety, he became lost in thought, until a brilliant, opportunistic idea began to take shape in his mind. Kalen clarified his strategy for the experience potions, stating he would first empower his companions before considering selling them on the open market. At that moment, his friend Elara eagerly asked if by some chance, Kalen considered her one of his companions. He met her hopeful gaze and confirmed that he absolutely did. Overcome with excitement, she vowed that she and Anya would serve as his unwavering bodyguards in the future. Kalen, however, grew pensive, envisioning the chaos such a coveted item would unleash upon the world. He knew it would trigger a massive impact, and in its wake, incredible opportunities for profit would surface. But with them would come men like Zane, swarming like greedy flies, drawn to the scent of power. To preserve peace, he concluded it was wisest to first nurture the strength of those closest to him. This would fortify their own power, for when those with malicious intent finally emerged, it would be time to act decisively. Kalen's thoughts then shifted to Anya's guildmate, the Berserker, asking if his name was indeed Jackson. He suggested that the experience potions could be a boon for him as well, bringing a wave of relief to the two girls. Elara explained that just last night, the Berserker had been consumed with anxiety. He feared he wouldn't be skilled enough to enter the same university, but this news would finally grant him peace of mind. Kalen mused that Jackson was undeniably talented, and with Elara being a skilled cleric, the two of them would prove to be invaluable allies. Just then, Silas, the alchemist, approached him. He humbly asked if he could call him brother, and inquired if he possessed any more extraordinary recipes. Kalen simply replied that he did, handing another formula to the alchemist, who began to study it with intense focus. A cold sweat began to form on Silas's brow, as a deep sense of disappointment in his own abilities washed over him. He had never even heard of most of the ingredients listed, recognizing only 2 familiar components from the entire formula. He was gripped by the chilling fear that he would be utterly incapable of preparing it with his current level of expertise. A spark of intense curiosity ignited within Liu Feng. He was contemplating recipes that originated from an entirely different world. The potential was staggering. If they could successfully replicate even a handful of them, it would be a monumental achievement. At that very moment, Elara suggested that once the initial batch of experience potions was brewed, they should summon the Berserker and Shane for a joint training session, patting Liu Feng on the shoulder as she included him. This sudden inclusion filled him with apprehension, and he instinctively tried to feign ignorance to get out of it. However, Elara quickly cut him off, telling him to relax, as the city had just released a new directive. The notice officially permitted guild teams to venture out for training, so their expedition would be completely sanctioned. They immediately began discussing the best day to schedule the training, and Shane made it clear he would handle the calculations. He determined that producing enough potions to supply everyone would likely take until the following Monday. Elara declared that the timing was perfect and formally scheduled the session for next Monday, expressing her gratitude. The cleric simply brushed off the thanks, noting that her brother had a completely open schedule anyway. All the while, Liu Feng felt completely adrift, as no one had bothered to consult him. Time passed, and Monday finally dawned. Liu Feng stood at the meeting point, reporting to Elara over the phone that he had already made it to the location. She calmly instructed him to wait by the roadside, reassuring him that their arrival was imminent. In the meantime, a school bus passed by the spot where he was standing, carrying the familiar faces of his classmates. They peered out, wondering if the solitary figure could possibly be Liu Feng, until a closer look erased all doubt. They confirmed it was indeed him, realizing that he evidently would not be participating in their training activities that day. A wave of derisive laughter and mockery quickly spread through the bus, but just as quickly, they decided to move on. In their eyes, it was pointless to waste time talking about someone as utterly insignificant as Liu Feng. It was far more practical to get some sleep and arrive well-rested for their training. As time passed, a crowd began to form at the entrance to the restricted zone. Professor Chloe's class from the academy finally reached the destination, only to find a massive crowd already gathered. One of the students, restless, turned to Professor Chloe and asked when their turn to enter would finally come. She estimated it would likely be another 2 hours, a revelation that sent a wave of groans through the students. Their impatience boiled over as they questioned if they truly had to endure such a long wait, to which Chloe confirmed they did. They were assigned to the second wave, she explained. But just then, a student's gaze fell upon a familiar figure far ahead. Finn. He urgently gestured for his classmates to look, their eyes widening in disbelief as they confirmed it was indeed him. Awe and envy filled them as they saw he was accompanied by the renowned goddess, Evelyn Wang, and her prestigious guild, the Sovereign Lion. The student's indignation flared when he watched Finn and his elite group walk straight through the portal, completely ignoring the queue. He immediately demanded an explanation from Professor Chloe, asking why they were allowed to enter without waiting. The professor, equally taken aback, clarified that Finn was none other than the leader of the Sovereign Lion Guild. Consequently, they were likely proceeding directly to the heart of the restricted zone, where the crowds were thinner and the challenges greater. This was a privilege far different from what her ordinary class could expect, a fact that made the questioning student burn with fury. He muttered that he should be the one standing beside the goddess Evelyn, while his friend beside him expressed disbelief. How could someone like Finn dare to venture into the core of the secret area? A single minor monster there could easily overwhelm him. At that very moment, a voice cut in from behind, asking if they were perhaps discussing Evelyn Wang. The student, startled and breaking into a cold sweat, confirmed that they were indeed talking about the prodigy, ranked 5th in the national rookie standings. The stranger who had inquired about Evelyn offered a brief word of thanks to the student. "Excellent," the newcomer declared, "because that's precisely where we're headed," before striding toward the portal with 2 companions in tow. Professor Chloe's students could only stand and watch as another group bypassed the line without a moment's hesitation. The same disgruntled student seethed with anger, questioning why these newcomers also had the right to be so arrogant. His classmate, noticing his vacant stare, leaned in and asked if he was unaware of who they were, proceeding to explain that the 3 individuals were, much like Wang Yui, considered rising stars within the national rookie rankings. The girl in question, she clarified, held the 4th position and was named Chung Muchiu. The formidable man in 3rd place was Ji Qi, and the one holding the 2nd rank was the renowned Gu Yunzhou. Shortly after, Feng's party advanced to the very heart of the clandestine area, where Shu Wei wasted not a single moment. He tossed a vial to Jiang Shu, whose eyes widened with elation upon identifying it as an experience potion. A potion that offered a full 100% boost. Overcome with joy, the cleric was about to shout when his companion quickly slapped the back of his head. He was urged to lower his voice, a stern reminder that the people surrounding them should not learn of such a valuable item. He offered a quick apology, admitting his excitement had gotten the better of him. Jiang Shu then turned to the alchemist, asking if by some chance, that potion was exceptionally valuable. Shu Wei explained that, contrary to expectation, it wasn't particularly difficult to create. He elaborated that the necessary ingredients weren't especially rare, and even the crafting method was far from complex. He clarified that this was precisely why the recipe itself was so precious. If one could amplify experience gain at a relatively minimal cost, it was an advantage no one would ever turn down. He even speculated that this single formula could earn Feng the status of an honorary guest at any major guild. Hearing this, the cleric's face lit up, telling Feng that every person present was benefiting immensely from his involvement. Jiang Shu pounded his own chest with conviction, making it unequivocally clear to the protagonist that should he ever require assistance in the future, he needed only to ask. Feng gave an awkward laugh, remarking that they were all members of the same team. There was no need for such stiff formalities. Yua, watching this exchange from a distance, simply observed them with a gentle smile. She mused that Feng's guarded personality was never well suited for socializing, which was the reason he had always maintained so few friendships. This became particularly pronounced after the failure of his awakening at the age of 16. Yua felt a pang of sorrow, imagining the taunts he must have endured from others at school. That cruelty had only driven him deeper into his shell. But as she looked at the protagonist now, a genuine happiness blossomed within her. It was a rare privilege to witness him so openly happy and engaged, and she sincerely hoped this was the start of his healing. Clearing her throat to command the group's focus, Yuefei announced she had something important to discuss. "Listen up," she began, explaining their tactical disadvantage. "We are currently operating without a dedicated tank or a primary magic damage dealer. Therefore, our priority must be maximum safety," she continued, her gaze falling upon the protagonist, making it clear that he was to hold back. His role was to avoid drawing the creature's attention. With the plan set, Yuefei declared loudly, "I will lure the monsters." She then directed Jiang Shu to engage them, while Shu Ting was assigned to focus exclusively on buffs and protective spells. Meanwhile, Shu Wei was to use his potions as the situation demanded. A chorus of determined agreements confirmed everyone understood their roles. A flash of frustration crossed our hero's mind. This cautious approach would significantly hinder his own progress. However, out of respect for his new companions, he resolved to cooperate with their strategy. He knew that leveling with forbidden curses was exponentially faster, but for now, he was not in a particular hurry. Considering it an opportunity to assess everyone's abilities, he decided to play along with the team's plan. Without wasting a second, Yuefei drew her bow, her movements swift and precise as she loosed an arrow. The projectile struck the cluster of monsters, erupting in a brilliant explosion that immediately captured their rage, causing them to charge straight for her. Shu Ting instantly raised her staff, her spell casting a powerful buff on the berserker, who was already preparing his devastating attack. Jiang Shu then unleashed a mighty blow upon the ground, sending a shockwave of earth and rock hurtling toward the approaching horde. Shu Wei seized the opening, launching several experience potions that shattered upon the staggered creatures. His face lit up with excitement as he watched their experience points climb rapidly. If this kept up, he thought, he would soon be able to craft a brand new potion. Shu Ting and Jiang Shu exchanged celebratory looks. They realized that at this pace, they could reach the second stage before the entrance exams, guaranteeing admission into the top academies. Their celebration was abruptly cut short by a peculiar noise emanating from the deeper recesses of the cave. Jiang Shu immediately tensed, calling out into the darkness, "Who's there?" The figure that emerged was Oh Yunzhou. A sinister chuckle escapes him, followed by a disingenuous apology, claiming he couldn't possibly have meant to laugh. However, he confessed he couldn't contain his amusement at hearing someone who hadn't even cleared the second stage, already boasting about acceptance into a prestigious university. He made the jab with his entourage flanking him. Seraphina and the berserker were visibly taken aback, questioning what they were witnessing. Could these really be the top talents from the national rookie rankings? Julian simply sneered. He seemed delighted that their reputation preceded them, given how quickly they were recognized. This only deepened the confusion for the berserker and the cleric, who wondered why on earth they would be here. After all, they were a long way from home, in a remote area like Silverwood. At that moment, Elara Vance arrived. She directly asked the nationally ranked students if they required something, as her team was occupied with training. Julian, flanked by his companions, stepped forward, declaring he wished to speak specifically with Elara. He then posed the question directly. Was she interested in joining their elite team? Seraphina and the berserker were stunned by the proposition, but Elara's decline was swift and resolute. She informed him that she already had a team of her own, a response that made Julian's expression tighten with indignation. He retorted that he knew, but pointedly mentioned her team's mage, a certain Aiden Zhao. He noted Aiden's rank as 14th in the national rookie standings, and that if he were interested, he could also be considered for their team, even with his slightly lower rank. Julian condescendingly framed it as a personal favor to her. Elara, her patience wearing thin, asked if she hadn't been perfectly clear. Having already stated her refusal to join any other guild, she watched his frustration mount as he pleaded with her not to be so hasty. He patronizingly suggested that in a backwater region like Silverwood, important news must travel slowly. Julian began to explain that due to the frequent fluctuations in the secret zones, the monsters were becoming increasingly difficult to subdue. Moreover, the most prestigious universities have tightened their admission criteria this year, accepting only the most elite teams. Alternatively, they will consider individuals with truly exceptional backgrounds, but the available positions are incredibly scarce. With a confident smile, he emphasizes to Elara that she is on the verge of letting a golden opportunity slip through her fingers. He explains that a major power shift is underway, with new talents in the rankings strategically reforming their squads, and his team is leading the charge. He clarifies that the very reason they extended the invitation was to acquire the unique strength her current team possesses. After delivering his pitch, Julian's entire demeanor shifts, his voice dropping as he asks Elara a chilling question. He urges her not to forget the immense power she was destined to wield, his gaze flicking meaningfully toward her companions. Julian subtly implies that her friends are holding her back, a clear insinuation that infuriates them. With a cold, derisive laugh, Julian declares that in their world, weakness is the ultimate transgression. Instantly, Elara begins to materialize her bow, his words striking a nerve, but he calmly advises her against acting rashly. He points out the obvious tactical disadvantage, reminding her that as a ranged attacker, initiating a fight at this proximity would be a grave mistake. A frightened Celine steps forward, placing a gentle hand on Elara's shoulder, pleading with her to stand down. She softly suggests they simply find another area to conduct their training, her voice laced with urgency. At her words, Elara's guild members silently turn to leave, but Kale remains rooted to the spot, his eyes fixed on their antagonists. He thinks to himself how utterly grating Julian's arrogance is, and with Elara having recently unlocked a new class, he briefly considers his chances. He wonders if he could actually defeat him, but his thoughts are shattered as Garen violently stomps his foot on the ground. The aggressive act immediately draws Kale's attention, and Garen locks eyes with him, asking if he is, by any chance, Jackson Cole. Kale curtly replies that he is not, prompting Garen to react. A sinister laugh escapes Garen's lips as he tells Kale to make himself scarce immediately. He sneers that Kale is nothing but a worthless obstacle, a final insult that instantly ignites a burning fury within him. However, Jiangshu steps forward, demanding that GK show a measure of respect. This insolence enrages GK, who snarls, questioning if the berserker possesses a death wish before throwing a vicious punch. Jiangshu manages to parry the blow, but he is staggered by the sheer, unbridled force behind GK's strike. The immense pressure proves too much, and Jiangshu takes the full, crushing impact. A concerned Yue rushes to his side, asking if he is all right, but her path is cut off as Yunjo steps in front of her, physically preventing her from getting any closer. She immediately demands that he move, her fierce expression startling him into a momentary pause. Their attention is broken by the berserker's strained voice, telling them to stay out of it as he kneels on the ground, clearly in great pain. Jiangshu knows he is in serious trouble, realizing with a grimace that the punch likely broke a few of his ribs. He silently curses GK's cruelty as he forces himself to his feet, telling Feng to keep his distance. His mind races, determined that he cannot allow the protagonist to be dragged into the brutal confrontation that looms ahead. GK simply scoffs that it is all useless, a comment that ignites Jiangshu's fury as he begins to focus power into his fists. But he is caught off guard by GK's startling speed, realizing in a terrifying split second that another hit is coming. He has absolutely no chance to block or dodge. At the same time, Yue and Shu Ting brace themselves to act. But it is already far too late. The devastating blow is just about to land squarely on the berserker's face. Then, in a flash, a hand appears from nowhere, blocking GK's punch. It is Feng, the protagonist. He effortlessly halts the violent attack, leaving every single person in the vicinity utterly shocked into silence. GK's frustration mounts, especially when he realizes he cannot move, baffled as to why someone dressed like a pathetic mage possesses such an overwhelmingly powerful aura. Feng wastes no time, grabbing GK's fist and pulling him forward with immense force. The motion rips a scream of agony from GK as Feng flings him through the air as if he were nothing more than a rag doll. He smashes violently into a formation of large rocks, which immediately crumble and collapse, burying him beneath the debris. Burying his opponent in the process, Feng turns, a sinister smile gracing his lips as he mutters the word useless. Immediately, Leo rushes forward to aid his friend, completely oblivious to Yuna, who is already drawing her bowstring taut. An arrow finds its mark directly in his rear, causing him to yelp and hop around in a comical dance of agony. Unable to process that he was just shot in the backside, the archer herself erupts into a fit of unrestrained laughter. While she finds the attack utterly hilarious, Mika is paralyzed with fear at the sight of Leo's predicament. Her amusement quickly morphs into terror as she processes the impossible. A mage had just overpowered an unarmed berserker, and an archer had struck a tank at point-blank range. She begins to wonder if this entire scene is nothing but a twisted dream. After all, both Leo and Kai were celebrated names within the elite new talent rankings. Our protagonist takes a deep, frustrated breath. His entire goal was to remain discreet, and these complications were the last thing he wanted. He turns to Shu, urging her to snap out of her shock and focus on healing the fallen berserker. She affirms with a nod and immediately begins to channel her healing energy into Jax, mending his wounds. While she works, our hero asks the berserker how he plans to deal with Kai. Jax admits that he has no idea, but he adds that he will follow whatever our protagonist commands, a declaration that catches Feng completely by surprise. In that moment, he realizes that his friend's allegiance and respect were shifting dramatically. Our protagonist then orders the berserker to approach Kai and relieve him of his equipment, calling it fair compensation for the annoyance he caused. Leo becomes utterly outraged by this command, demanding to know how they could dare commit such an act of blatant theft. Before he can finish his tirade, he is silenced by a menacing surge of power that appears just inches from his face. It is our protagonist, his expression cold and threatening, asking Leo if he had something he wished to say. Leo's expression shifts instantly from fury to fear as he stammers, "Actually." He quickly offers that he also possesses valuable equipment, hoping the tribute might be enough to calm the terrifying figure before him. With the matter settled, Feng claps a hand on his shoulder, giving him a hug that felt more like a warning. He remarks that at least Yunjo knows when to yield, admitting he has a personal distaste for unnecessary conflict. His voice lowers as he makes it perfectly clear that if Yunjo ever dares to dream of revenge, he will live to regret it. Utterly terrified, Yunjo hastily promises they would never do something so reckless. At that very moment, Muchu steps forward, asking if her equipment could also be taken as a tribute. As she hands her gear over, Feng observes her shrewdness, noting to himself that she is a remarkably clever girl. He then instructs them to continue their training elsewhere, leaving Muchu flushed with embarrassment, now standing completely unarmed. Instantly, a wave of excitement ripples through Yui's guildmates, who all cheer that it was a brilliant resolution. Later, while walking through the private grounds, Yui confesses to Feng that she had been planning to take him training, but she admits she never imagined he was already this powerful, which earns a dry, ironic laugh from him. He reminds her that she knew he had recently changed classes, explaining he wanted to avoid attracting too much attention. Such attention, he adds, would only bring problems, but Yui grows frustrated with his secretive attitude. She sighs, saying she'll let it go and won't press him further, lamenting that he never truly opens up about anything. With that same ironic smile, Feng looks at her and points out that, despite his silence, she understands him better than anyone. Her frustration melts away in an instant as she quickly places a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Her sudden touch catches him by surprise, but her face is beaming with genuine happiness as she tells him that no matter what, she is truly happy for him. A rare, sincere smile graces Feng's lips as he quietly thanks her for her support. Their moment is interrupted as Shu Ting and Jiang Shu approach, their curiosity getting the better of them. They ask Feng if he has decided which university he plans to attend or which guild he might be interested in joining. He simply states that he hasn't given either question any thought, as their group continues onward, with Shu Wei calling for them to wait up. However, Flynn becomes intrigued, imagining that both the university and the guild are places with strict management. A mistake could reveal his biggest secrets. Thinking that it might not be a good idea for him to join either, he ponders this, but soon the Prota changes his expression, shouting to everyone that they can still go deeper into the secret area, and speed up, leveling up, as Yui can simply attract more monsters at once. And he, as the tank and main DPS, will take care of most of them, asking the others to handle the rest, which gets everyone excited by the Prota's enthusiasm content. Flynn imagines that even though he can't use high-level magic, using attribute buffs and passive abilities might be enough. Some time passes, and the Prota goes to Dwayne's house, who is surprised to see him saying that he finally returned. Flynn is disappointed, because he had worked hard for a few days, and only gained 1 level, and if it weren't for the new experience potions, his progress would have been even slower since he got used to killing high-level monsters with forbidden spells. Flynn sits down thinking that usually people like Yui, who start as novices, can reach level 60 in 2 years until they complete the second transformation. He then considers entering a local university. However, he quickly changes his mind, saying that he doesn't want to think too much about the matter and will relax and be lazy for a few days, because if he gets stronger and still has to work as hard as the others, what would be the point of becoming stronger after saying that the Proteus starts to relax? Playing video games with Dwayne, sleeping over and over again, and going out to eat with Dwayne. Until while eating, the Prota hears his phone ring, realizing it's Shina. He asks if she wanted something. She informs him that there will be an auction soon, and she heard that there will be good items there, and that the new Master Tang was inquiring if he might be interested in attending. Feng queries if this Master Tang is the one succeeding Wang, and she confirms with a weary sigh. Our protagonist replies that he has been without much to do lately, so it would be a fine opportunity to investigate. She makes it clear that she and Master Tang will be waiting for him with the list. He agrees that it sounds acceptable and returns his focus to the meal before him. He muses that perhaps the service in this establishment had improved and wonders if this new Master Tang is more adept at handling people than his predecessor. Some time passes, and Feng, along with Duan, he arrives at the pivotal meeting, where the venerable Master Thorn formally introduces himself, declaring his profession as a master appraiser. From the Sukin branch of the Yucheng Trade Exchange, our hero rises and extends his hand in greeting. He addresses him respectfully as Master Tang, but a flustered Yikai recoils, insisting that the protagonist need not be so formal, given his recent arrival. He pleads with our hero to treat him as an ordinary person, though inwardly, Master Tang recalls a stern warning. Before his arrival, Mayor Dong Ming had made it abundantly clear that he was to treat the protagonist exceptionally well. According to Mayor Ming, dedicating the entire market to him would not pose a problem. He turns and gestures for Miss Shin to quickly bring the list of auction items to present to Feng. She hands the document to our hero, who begins to look through it intently. He grows pensive, noticing that it contained only a few pieces of equipment and a handful of potions. All of them were designed for mages, and none would serve his specific needs. As our protagonist rapidly assesses the items, a sense of unease begins to creep over Mr. Yikai, for it seemed Feng was reviewing the inventory with alarming speed, and appeared to find nothing that appealed to him. A seed of doubt began to sprout in his mind. Just as he contemplated underestimating his opponent's abilities, something else entirely captured Finn's gaze. A flicker of intense focus in his friend's eyes left him deeply concerned, noting that something had caught the protagonist's attention. Sensing the shift, Kai approached, remarking, "You have a sharp eye, Finn. What you're looking at is truly exceptional." Kai gestured toward the flickering image of the object, his voice filled with admiration as he began to explain. "It's an elixir of insight," he said, "capable of increasing experience gains by 100%. An incredibly rare find, perfect for accelerated growth." A heavy silence fell over Finn as his mind raced back to a conversation he once shared with Sylvia. Dylan was also stunned by the item's significance, realizing it had even drawn the attention of the renowned Master Tong. Master Tong, baffled by the sudden tension, watched as Finn's expression hardened into a grim mask. "Where did you get that?" Finn's voice was low and intense, the abrupt question hanging awkwardly in the air. Taken aback, Kai replied, "It came from the Blue Shark Guild." He then cautiously asked, "Is something wrong? Why the sudden gravity?" Finn's mind began to race. The Blue Shark Guild was one of the 7 most powerful guilds in the entire nation. With their immense power and influence, he couldn't help but speculate that Sylvia had either secretly sold the formula to them, or they had taken it from her by other means. Turning abruptly, Finn pressed Ethan for more information. He questioned if the guild had revealed the potion's origin. Ethan relayed what little he knew, explaining, "I only heard they uncovered a new instance. It's called the Trial of the Gods," he continued. "A challenge that must be faced alone, and it appears to be constructed in multiple layers. A significant reward is granted for every 10 layers a challenger overcomes, and this formula was one of those prizes." Dylan, captivated by this revelation, admitted it was the first time he had ever heard of such a place. He then questioned if this was another instance mutation, considering that official protocol demanded certain procedures. According to the regulations, any exploration of a new instance must first be registered with the specialized county authorities. Basic information should have been readily available on the official website, a discrepancy that left Finn deep in thought. A flicker of concern for Shu Wei crossed his mind, wondering if she had encountered trouble. Before his thoughts shifted to the enigmatic trial of the gods, it sounded like a realm of unimaginable power, but just as his imagination began to soar, his focus was abruptly broken. A system message materialized in his vision, formally notifying him of a new mission acquisition: the Trial of the Gods. The objective was to leverage the power of this trial for his personal benefit, with a strict time limit of 60 days for completion. The penalty for failure was brutally final: the complete and utter elimination of the host. A surge of excitement coursed through him. This was the very first official mission the system had ever assigned. Envisioning a truly captivating challenge, Feng turned to Yukai, expressing his thanks but regretfully declining his offer. He explained that he would not be taking part in the auction this time. Yukai simply replied that no thanks were necessary. However, he made it explicitly clear to Feng that should he need anything down the line, he could be sought out at any time. Despite his calm exterior, Yukai was worried, considering that the experience-boosting potions were the most sought-after items in the entire auction, with many powerful guilds keenly watching them. He had never conceived that Feng would be completely uninterested in them. At that moment, Duan asked Feng to hold on. He planned to quickly retrieve information on this instance, but our hero declared he would accompany him. His own curiosity was piqued, and he wanted to uncover the truth. Some time elapsed. Duan was digging frantically through the data, searching for anything about this instance, until he finally struck gold. He announced that they required the corresponding login authorization, but then recalled the special badge Mayor Zheng had gifted him. After utilizing the badge's authority, Duan confirmed to Feng that they were in. Feng leaned forward, studying the screen. He remarked that the structure looked just like a tower. Duan explained that the Blue Sharp Guild possessed exclusive authorization. This meant they held official permission to manage it independently, and without the guild's direct approval. It was impossible for any outsiders to enter. Feng immediately surmised that these specialized. The major guilds typically monopolized such instances, but with a life-or-death mission already issued, and knowing failure meant certain demise, Ethan was forced to contemplate more unconventional strategies. Following a critical discussion with Duan, Ethan resolved to advance toward the coordinates of the god's trial. Leveraging his teleportation ability, he materialized at a distance to meticulously survey the volatile zone. He found the continued presence of sentinels at this late hour perplexing, surmising that the Blue Sharp Guild had likely disseminated sensitive information about the trial on their forums to entice more formidable players into their ranks. This insight clarified his path forward. He concluded that by utilizing his stealth abilities for infiltration, he could bypass their security entirely. A ghost of a smile graced his lips as he committed to the action, making the leap. In a flicker of distorted space, he reappeared behind the oblivious sentinels, setting a direct course for the shimmering rift. However, his advance was cut short by a cataclysmic explosion that erupted without warning, leaving Ethan utterly stunned. The concussive blast violently flung both him and the nearby sentinels across the landscape. Simultaneously, at a remote monitoring station, one of the operators charged with overseeing the instance area urgently demanded confirmation of the massive energy signature they had just detected. A frantic voice responded, confirming they would notify the president immediately. Far from the chaos, back at Ethan's home, his spatial ability activated erratically, forcefully pulling him from the trial zone until he materialized and slammed into his own bed. Covered in blood and writhing in agony, his mind raced, desperately trying to understand what had just happened. He recalled the moment distinctly. He had merely touched the threshold of the instance when an overwhelming surge of energy erupted. It had completely annihilated the purification barrier he had erected, and a wave of fear washed over Ethan as he searched for an explanation. His spiraling thoughts were abruptly silenced by a system notification that materialized in his vision, bearing a grave warning. It stated that the system had repelled an external investigation, but had incurred 3% damage, resulting in a new cumulative total of 3%. A moment later, a second notification appeared, informing him that the system had sustained an additional 4% damage, reaching a total of 7%. Feng is in utter disbelief that even his own system has sustained damage. He questions the nature of the ability that could cause such a thing, but a cascade of new notifications interrupts his thoughts. The alerts flood in one after another, culminating in a total of 34% accumulated damage as the scene shifts back to the instance area. An investigative team has arrived on site, where a priest immediately begins tending to the guards who were injured by the explosion. She reports to the president that the men were only stunned, their bodies miraculously showing no signs of physical injury. Just then, one of the guards begins to stir, calling out for the president, who quickly moves to his side to ask what had transpired. This man is Shane Yu, the esteemed president of the Blue Sharp Guild. The guard explains that his memory is hazy, but he distinctly remembers the gateway to the trial of the gods suddenly erupting before him. After the blast, he lost consciousness. A concerned Shane Yu remarks that this is not the first report of such a strange occurrence. He wonders aloud if the instance itself might have mutated, and upon hearing this, a nearby mage steps forward. She approaches her leader, suggesting they employ a special technique to investigate what truly happened here. Shane Yu solemnly agrees, seeing no other alternative. With his consent, the mage immediately begins to channel her power. She activates Temporal Zone, and the president watches on, thinking how fortunate it is that this instance has a special spell embedded within it. This unique enchantment can not only record images within its vicinity, but also rewind time for the purpose of investigation. As he contemplates this, the mage's ability fully activates, peeling back the layers of time and revealing a sight that leaves everyone utterly shocked. They witness a shadowy creature materializing through a spatial tier, only to see another divine being emerge to confront it. The newcomer condemns the shadowy figure as a malevolent god, demanding to know by what right it dared to invade their sacred territory. An attack is launched, striking the mysterious entity, and the investigators are left reeling, stunned to hear it identified as a malevolent god. The vision shows the second deity raging within the rift, furious that the mysterious entity had once again managed to escape. The being declares that they must find the escapee at all costs, vowing that it cannot be allowed to bring ruin to this world. Their fear only deepens with the harrowing tale of global annihilation, and a heavy silence descends after some time has passed. Leo then projects the startling images from the temporal zone for every guild president in attendance to see. Victor Liu declares that, according to the visuals secured by the Blue Shark Guild, this is their first tangible proof of the existence of deities, emphasizing that while their identities are unknown, the spells they unleashed are powerful enough to match the forbidden enchantments of legend. Arca, president of the Endless Guild, addresses Leo, stating he remembers their report mentioning that, by conquering the trial, they could secure the favor and gifts of these divine beings. He then questions if this was truly the case. Leo confirms that there was indeed such a reward within the instance, but they had never conceived that an actual deity would manifest. At that moment, Helena Yu, the one leading the Aurora Guild, interjects. She clarifies that the central problem is the existence of forbidden spells capable of eradicating a deity, and that is far from reassuring news. Luna Luo, the acting president of the Hope Guild, voices her concern that if a deity decides to end the world, they would likely be powerless to stop it. Benson Wang, the president of the Dawn Guild, offers a different perspective. Since they could acquire a divine gift by completing the trial, he speculates if there might be a way to confront the deity by utilizing these forbidden enchantments. Julian Zheng, the acting president of the Burning Flame Guild, smirks, remarking that it might be an avenue worth exploring. Meanwhile, Leo feels a flicker of suspicion, realizing that everyone present is keenly focused on the trial of the gods. It seems as if they are looking for an opening to extort him. Warily, he declares that if they all desire to join the trial, he has no objections, but he makes it unequivocally clear that the entities and relics within the trial of the gods are another matter entirely. These beings are overwhelmingly powerful. With our current level of strength, we stand no chance of defeating them. A heavy silence descended upon the room. After a tense moment, Liu Ying turned to old Feng, his voice low, asking if he had any strategy in mind. He scoffed, retorting with bitter sarcasm. What ideas could I possibly have? What can I do? He then scanned the room, pointedly asking, weren't you all supposed to be the skilled ones here? Liu Ying attempted to pacify him, urging, don't let your anger cloud your judgment. We summoned you back because something truly monumental has occurred. But old Feng's fury was unabated. He seethed. In all of your eyes, is there anything more important than protecting yourselves from them? The mutants? Is there nothing else worth reporting? I heard my own apprentice flagged an anomaly in Chenyu, and not a single one of you cared. Yet, you still managed to assemble an investigation team. His voice dripped with disdain as he demanded, so, tell me what happened. That investigation led to nothing and created an even bigger disaster, and if it weren't for that mysterious Grandmaster in Chenyu, every one of you would be guilty of endangering innocent lives. Liu Ying, unable to meet the gaze of the former Lone Shadow leader, pleaded with him to calm himself, seeing that his temper was flaring dangerously once more. Observing old Feng, Yuan recalled the rumors. They said the price for wielding dark power was taking its toll, that his condition was worsening, forcing him into retirement. She never imagined she would see him in a meeting like this again. Adopting a somber expression, Liu Ying informed old Feng, I would like to personally request that your apprentice present the investigation footage we just reviewed to the enigmatic Grandmaster of Chenyu. Perhaps with his immense power, he might see something we've missed. Old Feng retorted with a bitter laugh. So, you only remember my apprentice exists now? Liu Ying quickly replied, I have 2 crates of the finest wine. I'll have them sent directly to you. Furthermore, the official commendation for your apprentice's meritorious service will be fast-tracked for approval. The gravity in Liu Ying's voice caught old Feng off guard, startling him into silence. Meanwhile, at Duan's residence, the young hero stared pensively at a translucent screen, a deep sense of foreboding telling him that the mission was far from over, and in its place, a new quest had already materialized. Its name simply reading, Don't worry. The objective seemed deceptively minor. Achieve the second transformation and complete the system's repairs. The deadline was a strict 60 days, and the penalty for failure was nothing less than the host's complete annihilation. He found himself stunned by the mission's peculiar name. A chilling thought crossing his mind his system might actually be damaged. Yet, he didn't seem overly concerned as he rose from his bed and began to walk, pushing the thought aside. A flicker of doubt entered his mind, wondering if he had made a grave error in his recent choices. Upon entering the living room, he was met with an unexpected sight. Several unfamiliar faces were there, standing alongside Dean. Master Feng rose to his feet, his gaze sharp, and asked our hero, "Pardon me, but are you perhaps Feng?" Feng affirmed that he was, immediately asking the old man's identity, but Dean stepped in to make the introduction. He explained that this was the former head of the Lone Shadow and the current director of the Adventurer Management Department. Dean then gestured to a woman, introducing her as Miss Jean, noting that she was Master Feng's personal disciple. He added that she was now responsible for overseeing all Lone Shadow operations within their province. Dean explained their purpose for being there. They had come to seek the help of the mysterious Great Master. Without wasting a moment, Master Feng's piercing gaze met Feng's as he asked, "Are you, by any chance, the Scarlet Flame Death God?" The question left him utterly startled, but the tense silence was abruptly shattered by the old man's hearty laughter. He claimed he was only joking, but as Feng observed the old man, he could sense a deeply unsettling aura. Feng's mind raced, realizing the man must possess incredible merits, having participated in the development of several major, secret domains, and dismantling numerous malevolent adventurer groups, earning him the title of the strongest mutant. Almost every member of the Lone Shadow organization kept their identities shrouded in absolute secrecy, but Master Feng was a glaring exception, as his very presence was a powerful deterrent and a threat in itself. This elder is a living legend, one of the top 3 icons in the nation. Merely exchanging words with him is a story one could boast about for a lifetime. Elder Feng expresses what a genuine pleasure it is to meet Leo, humbly stating he hadn't brought anything particularly special for their first encounter. Mentioning he'd heard Leo was preparing for his college entrance exams, the elder then presents a case, revealing it holds a staggering 5 million crystals. Along with 200 vials of advanced experience potions, he offers it as an official gift to our hero. Wishing him the best in his academic pursuits, Leo finds himself stunned, unable to process the sheer magnitude of the gift the elder just named. However, cutting through the pleasantries, Leo gets straight to the heart of the matter, directly asking the purpose of their visit. Jian quickly clarifies their primary reason for coming. They hope to consult the enigmatic Great Master about a certain matter. Their request was for the Master to review a video recording, and since they were all present, she suggested they could view it together. She then activates the device, bringing the footage to life before their eyes. On the screen flickers the chaotic scene from the Trial of the Gods, where a powerful deity rages against a figure they label the malevolent god. Leo freezes, his blood running cold as he hears the world brand his hidden persona a malevolent god. His mind races, questioning how an ordinary student like him could possibly be this deity of destruction, until a flash of memory brings his secret mission into sharp focus. He inwardly tries to dismiss it as a minor issue, but a wave of pure fury washes over him, directed squarely at his own system. He seethes internally, realizing this situation was anything but small, and a chilling thought begins to form. He considers that his system might be deliberately misleading him, but forces the anger down, knowing he must remain composed. He understood that he couldn't afford to panic. No one had witnessed his presence at that place. His true identity was safe. There was simply no way they could ever trace it back to him. Composing his features, Leo looks calmly at his 2 guests. He nods with an air of understanding, promising to forward the video to the mysterious Great Master for immediate review. He assures them that should any news arise from the Master, he would inform them without a moment's delay. Elder Feng expresses his sincere gratitude to Leo, stating they will now depart and eagerly await any forthcoming updates, and assures him that if he requires anything at all, he should not hesitate to contact Miss Jade. She presents her card to Leo, and as he accepts it, a sudden realization dawns on him she was the very same woman from before. The memory transports him back to the transformation room, a fresh wave of frustration washing over him. He muses that it's no wonder he was discovered so swiftly after departing from Dawn's residence. The elder remarks to Jade that Leo is precisely as they described, a fine, polite, and sensible individual. He states unequivocally that their official directive is to exhaust every possible measure to bring Leo onto their team, should the right opportunity ever present itself. A hint of suspicion in her voice, Jade asks her master if he considers the possibility that Nathan Feng and the enigmatic Great Master could be the very same person. He simply counters by asking if it would truly matter, clarifying that Nathan Feng wants them to see him as a student. Therefore, he is a student, an arrangement that serves everyone's interests, and offering 5 million crystals to a student, irrespective of their true identity, is an irrefutable act of goodwill. After all, if that student later emerges as the mysterious Great Master, Their future treatment of him will be judged by these early actions. Master Feng also explains that their enemies are growing in strength, but as Shiro had pointed out in their meeting, everyone desires the gift of the gods, yet none among them are qualified to obtain it. The most prudent course of action for everyone is to wait for the mysterious Great Master to become their ultimate salvation. Back at Dawn's house, Leo is lost in contemplation over his coffee, his thoughts drifting to an earlier incident. His internal system had detected a breach in his tracking ability, possibly the work of some divine entity investigating his location. He then recalls with startling clarity that this entity had been capable of shattering his absolute defense. It did so with a single, overwhelming blow, a feat that signaled the being had ascended to the realm of forbidden magic, rendering them a formidable threat. Finn grew anxious, realizing that his immediate priority was to fulfill the two directives from his system. Repairing it was obviously the most critical task, as he needed it to block the divine search, but the mission to conquer the trial could not be neglected. If he couldn't harness the enemy's power, they would rapidly evolve into an overwhelming danger. Finn turned to Dean, inquiring if, by any chance, Mr. Feng had provided any further intelligence. Dean confirmed that he had, assuring him he would quickly organize the details for him. Presenting the information gathered from Old Feng, Dean began his explanation to the hero. It seemed the internal structure of the secret trial realm was a tower, divided into an unknown number of floors. As it had yet to be fully explored, the exact count of its levels remained a mystery. He then highlighted that the beasts inside were incredibly powerful, far stronger than those in any other secret dimension. Currently, the standing record was 42 floors, set by the president of the Blue Sharp Guild, Helios. A sense of unease settled over Finn, as he still didn't comprehend the mechanics of the papyrus secret trial realm. If he were to trigger another forbidden divine magic, his true identity as a dark deity would be revealed. Since his mission didn't specify that he had to go himself, he wondered if he could send a proxy in his place. Finn asked Dean if he had seen the footage of Helios's climb through the floors. Dean confirmed that yes, he had watched it. With a serious gaze, our hero asked Dean how many floors he thought he could clear. Dean, intrigued by the question, replied that he could probably manage to get through 35 floors. Finn wasn't surprised, as he had expected as much. Helios was nearing his 5th transformation, and his power was significantly greater than Dean's. However, since Dean was a man he trusted implicitly, he would gladly send him to face the trial, even considering a special training regimen just for Duan. Sometime later, Old Feng is in utter disbelief, unable to process the words he is hearing. He questions Jing, asking if the enigmatic Great Master truly intends to send his student to the Blue Shark Guild. She confirms that was Duan's decision, and that he had also requested the use of the Lone Shadows training facility for a period of intensive preparation. The old man's interest is piqued, and he presses Jing for more information. He points out that, to his knowledge, Duan had not yet even attained the 5th stage of transformation. Jing confirms this is true, prompting a deep laugh from the old man, who declares that things are about to get very interesting. Her confusion is evident, but he quickly clarifies that just the day before, the presidents of the 7 great guilds had made their own attempt. They had challenged the secret trial realm, and he asks her to guess the outcome of their efforts. She is at a loss for words, but he doesn't wait for an answer, bluntly stating that every single one of them had failed. He emphasizes the point, revealing that even the legendary Liu Yingzhen could not succeed, leaving Jing stunned into silence. She stammers that President Liu Yingzhen is hailed as one of the most powerful individuals in the entire nation. If a warrior of his caliber could not pass the trial, she wonders aloud, then who possibly could? At that very moment, the old man's excitement reaches a fever pitch, and his head erupts in a column of spectral flames, like a spectral rider of vengeance. He roars with anticipation, eager to witness the outcome of Duan's trial, knowing he is the protege of the mysterious Great Master. He is desperate to see the heights Duan can reach, but his excitement is cut short as he realizes his head is once again ablaze. The sight terrifies his apprentice. Looking at her master, she knows those flames are the terrible price he pays. They are constantly consuming his life force, and a deep sorrow fills her as she questions if there is truly no way to help him. Time passes, and we find the protagonist and Duan now gathered within the formidable training room. With Jing and old Lao Feng present, Captain Zhou can only stare, mesmerized by the incredible scene unfolding before him, as he had never before witnessed warriors of the 4th and 5th transformation. Meanwhile, Jasmine's assistant revealed that she'd heard President Leo from the Power Guild had also wished to attend, but was personally prevented by the esteemed Mr. Feng. Zhou was suddenly struck by a memory, recalling the blind fury he felt when he first saw the protagonist. Tears of profound relief began to well in his eyes, knowing that if he had offended him back then, his fate would have been sealed. Jasmine explained to Dane with professional clarity that as long as they were provided with sufficient information, the training chamber could perfectly simulate a variety of combat environments, though it was a privilege reserved only for warriors of the fourth transformation or higher. Dane simply handed a data device to Jasmine, explaining that every piece of information she needed was stored within it. The protagonist, meanwhile, was beaming with excitement, explaining to Mr. Feng that this was his first time in such a place. Mr. Feng hinted that they possessed even more impressive facilities. Following this, Jasmine made her way to the planning room. She immediately connected Dane's information device, and what she discovered left her utterly speechless with admiration. Dane had meticulously detailed even the most obscure weaknesses of the monsters, but the most incredible revelation was that the data on the layers, which President Leo had only just recently cleared, were also included. At this, Mr. Feng gave a subtle, ironic smile. He thought to himself how obvious it was, considering that very secret realm had been invaded and controlled by the Demon King. All Dane needed to do was simply extract the flawless information from his own memory, and who would know a monster's vulnerabilities better than the Demon King himself? The old man respectfully approached Dane and asked if he would mind if they too observed his session. Dane replied that he had no objection, and graciously invited them to offer any advice they deemed necessary. But Mr. Feng shook his head, stating plainly that they would offer no advice, for they were also there to learn from him. His expression then grew serious, as he leaned in and asked with pointed curiosity, "Did the enigmatic Great Master truly prophesy that a malevolent god would bring about the world's destruction?" he questioned, his face etched with a sinister intensity. The sheer gravity of the question sent a chill of terror through Jasmine, while Dane stood motionless, his profound silence hanging heavily in the air. The memory surfaces of a time he was back home, terrified, as he posed a question to our hero. He had asked if the malevolent god truly planned to obliterate their world. Hearing this again, Finn feels a pang of deep unease. It dawns on him that Owen is completely unaware that he's speaking to the very malevolent god he fears. A conflict rages within our protagonist. Should he reveal the devastating truth? Even though Owen is a loyal friend, the secret is too monumental, the risk of exposure far too great to consider. As Finn grapples with this internal dilemma, Owen turns to Old Man Finn, explaining that he had once asked the chief the very same question. The chief's response, he said, was a mere 8 words. Instantly, both of them are captivated, eager to hear what they were. "What did the chief say?" they ask. At that moment, Owen echoes the chief's powerful declaration, "So long as I am here, that will not happen." A hearty laugh erupts from Finn, who exclaims that the answer was both simple and brimming with absolute confidence. It was perfectly in character for the chief. Nearby, Jin breaks into a nervous sweat. He can't help but wonder aloud what kind of awakened being the chief must be to so casually dismiss the threat of the gods themselves. Meanwhile, our protagonist feels a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing he had chosen his words with perfect precision. He had masterfully deflected any trace of suspicion. The old man then clasps Owen's hand firmly. He offers his gratitude, solemnly declaring that from this point forward, the fate of the secret trial realm rests entirely on his shoulders. Following this, Finn and the Elder retire to an observation room to monitor Owen's training. Time passes in the training grounds, leading to the present, intense moment. Owen is violently hurled against a wall, a horde of grotesque monsters closing in around him. With sheer determination, he lifts his battered head, steeling himself once more as the creatures surge toward him. Owen lets out a powerful roar, gathering a surge of energy before unleashing a devastating attack that annihilates the monsters. The effort, however, leaves him utterly drained, a fact that does not escape our protagonist's watchful eyes. He calls out, asking Owen if he needs to take a rest. Owen slumps to the ground, gasping to regain his breath. He waves off the concern, assuring Finn not to worry, that he just needs a moment before he's ready to go for a few more rounds. He feels that the protagonist has granted him a singular, life-altering opportunity. Thus, he is driven by a fierce determination not to fail him. Jing, deeply impressed by Duan's display, looks on. She remarks that those monstrous beings had already evolved beyond the 4th transformation limit. She confesses that had she been in his place, she would have certainly been unable to overcome the trial. Meanwhile, the old man, Lao Feng, adopts a grave expression, recalling something he had heard from Jing. She had mentioned that the protagonist only awakened at 18, yet completed his first transformation within a few short months. Witnessing the protagonist's meteoric rise, he dares to wonder if a similar miracle might be destined for Duan. Perhaps their chief could shatter the established combat system, allowing Duan to attain a power that rivals the gifts of the gods. Feng, however, feels a growing sense of concern, realizing he had dangerously oversimplified the situation. He had foolishly believed that merely knowing the monster's weak points would be enough, overlooking the fact that mortals, their gear, and their skills all have breaking points. Even with perfect knowledge of a foe's vulnerability, it means nothing if one lacks the strength to reach it. Gazing at the exhausted figure of Duan, the protagonist considers the grim alternative. If Duan should fail this trial, the task would fall to him, a warrior with precious little actual combat experience. His only recourse would be the forbidden arts, a desperate gambit that carried an immense risk of exposing his true nature. He then approaches Mr. Lao and Jing, informing them of his imminent departure, explaining that classes at his academy will resume next week. He needs time to prepare. They understand completely, urging him to reach out should he require any assistance. After taking his leave, Feng is lost in thought, strategizing that before the academy's gates open once more, it would be wise to raise his own level. Securing powerful new skills or equipment to take Duan's place would be ideal. Ducking into a shadowy alley, he draws forth a scroll, clutching it firmly in his hand. He knows that to vanish from this place without a trace, the flight scroll remains his single best choice. Feng raises his hand, activating a teleportation scroll, recalling his foresight in commissioning a fresh batch from the trade market. Confident this supply would suffice for a time, he vanished in a flash of light, reappearing moments later at his intended destination. His eyes scanned the landscape, quickly locating the shimmering rift. A flicker of satisfaction crossed his face. This was one of the two untamed secret realms Duan had spoken of. It was a wild territory, still beyond the reach of official control. However, as his gaze swept the area, something felt deeply wrong. He detected the unmistakable signs of a recent, violent struggle. Yet Feng decisively pushed the thought aside. He strode purposefully towards the portal, eager to uncover what awaited him. Meanwhile, just beyond the shimmering gateway to the secret area, a booted foot ground an adventurer's head into the dirt. The culprits were a grotesque assembly of mutants, loyal followers of the evil clan. A hulking brute questioned his chief about a recent flash of light nearby, but the masked leader merely dismissed it as a simple flight scroll. Another clan member voiced a hint of concern, wondering if the scroll's user had arrived with the intent to exterminate them. The masked chief of the evil clan erupted in derisive laughter, declaring that whoever it was had simply come to meet their end. He proclaimed with fanatical glee that the more heroes who arrived, the more sacrifices would be offered to their glorious demon king. With chilling pride, he then announced that their efforts had already gathered sufficient power for their lord. "The demon king will rise again," he roared, igniting a frenzy of celebration among his followers as they hailed their sovereign's imminent return. Their long-awaited day had finally dawned. Unbeknownst to them, a communication device on one of the fallen adventurers remained active. On the other end of the line, a fellow adventurer listened in horror, overhearing every chilling word of the evil clan's proclamation. A cold dread seized her, her mind reeling with the implications of the Demon King's resurgence. Understanding what this invasion of the secret realm signified, she wasted no time and rushed to report to her superior. She relayed the terrifying news. The mutants of the evil clan had declared that the mountain sanctuary would face an invasion from the secret realm that very day. A wave of panic immediately spread through the room as everyone commented on the dire threat of a secret realm invasion. Such an event would instantly corrupt the nearest city, plunging its entire population into mortal danger. His men looked to him for orders, their faces etched with uncertainty as sweat beads on the captain's brow. He delivers the grim news. Squad 4 has been completely wiped out, and even if they were to charge in now, they would be powerless to halt the invasion, a truth that deepens his palpable dread. His mind conjures images of unstoppable monsters pouring from the sanctuary, forces so potent the magical barrier would surely crumble before them. With a sharp turn, he barks his command. They are to fall back immediately and sound the alarm for the authorities. Their priority must be to evacuate the civilian population as swiftly as possible, prompting one loyal soldier to ask what his own fate will be. The captain explains his intent to remain, to serve as an early warning, knowing that for all their sophisticated equipment, they can never predict the exact moment the secret realm will tear into their world. One of his squad members protests, insisting they cannot abandon him, but the captain's roar cuts him off, urging them to waste no more time. They must hurry and alert the city to begin the evacuation. And that is his final command. Following his orders, they retreat, their hearts heavy with the sorrow of leaving their leader to face the coming evil alone. He stares up at the sky, a bitter frustration seizing him as he wonders why this cataclysm had to unfold on this particular day. He pulls out his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he dials his daughter, telling her there might be an emergency drill later. He tells her not to be scared, pleading with her to listen carefully to her mother. Her small voice rings through the receiver, asking where he is, and he forces a calm tone, explaining that he's just very busy with work. He called only to warn her about the drill, he says, before abruptly ending the call. The weight of his lie crushing him, a profound sadness washes over him, a chilling certainty that something terrible is about to happen. And then, his phone rings again. It's her. He answers with a forced smile, asking what his little girl wanted. Why did you hang up? She chirps. I still had something I wanted to say to you. He asks her what it is she needed to tell him, but just then, a terrifying wave of dark energy ripples through the air as his daughter's voice turns into a scream. The praise was so overwhelming it brought him to tears, utterly unable to believe this day was truly real. Meanwhile, the adventurers racing to sound the alarm felt a sinister power begin to echo across the land. A chilling question arose among them. Had the invasion of the secret realm already begun? Their thoughts, heavy with dread, turned to their captain. He, however, was lost in his own world of sorrow, weeping profoundly over the catastrophic situation he now faced. Assembled near the entrance to the secret realm, the entire evil clan stood awestruck by the immense power radiating from within. They were convinced that their demon king was about to bless them with even greater strength and favor. Yet, deep inside the secret realm, the protagonist had already encased everything in ice with his devastating cold ability. This skill, Extreme Cold, was a forbidden magic capable of summoning an infinite, world-ending ice disaster. With a wave of absolute zero sweeping the land, Feng began to walk through the frozen wasteland, tapping an ice-formed coffin. He laughed aloud, remarking to himself that the monsters here yielded an incredible amount of experience. Thanks to this bounty, he had swiftly ascended to level 37 and could now acquire a powerful new skill. However, in his haste, the protagonist had failed to notice that one of the creatures entombed in his ice was the very demon king the evil clan was so eagerly awaiting. Ignorant of this, he opened his system to inspect his new skill options. He made his choice, and a short while later, the world outside began to shift. Something started to emerge from the portal of the secret area. As one, the entire evil clan fell to their knees to salute their great demon king. But the figure who casually strolled out of the portal was the protagonist, Feng, with his characteristically carefree demeanor. A deafening silence descended as both Feng and the devoted cultists stared at each other, before a jolt of pure shock shot through him. What in the world is happening here? He thought, as the leader of the evil clan felt a terror far greater than simple confusion. The leader demanded to know where the Demon King was, having no idea that their mighty sovereign was already gone, trapped in an eternal, frozen tomb. The clan leader studied Feng, realizing with dawning horror that the protagonist had no idea who they were. The man dismisses the notion that Finn could be an incarnation of the Demon King, let alone one of his chosen, yet a spark of intrigue is kindled within him. His eyes drift over Finn's gear, recognizing the unmistakable signs of a complete novice, and he wonders how someone so unprepared would dare to tread here alone. The memory of the flight scroll from earlier surfaces, and he speculates that Finn might be a mere opportunist who sought an alliance with the Demon King. He imagines the boy was overwhelmed by the potent dark energy and lost his way. Believing this, he roars out his question. He demands to know if the protagonist came to pledge allegiance to the Demon King, but Finn, lost in the unfolding chaos, fails to grasp the accusation. He offers a simple no, stating that his purpose is none of their concern. The declaration sends the wicked clan leader into a fit of fury. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he snarls, introducing himself as the infamous Gideon Zhao. He proclaims his status as an A-level wanted criminal, with the weight of more than 100 lives on his conscience. Finn, however, couldn't care less about the leader's reputation. A menacing aura radiates from him, making it clear to all that if they desire a conflict, he is ready. "Then fight," he declares. "Otherwise, you should leave immediately." This brazen challenge makes the leader's blood boil with even greater fury. His sentiment is echoed by the other clan members, who begin to erupt in a cacophony of threats and insults. They scream that the protagonist will forfeit his life for his arrogance, but suddenly, their voices catch in their throats. A chilling terror grips them as they try to comprehend why the very air around them is darkening, only to look up and see a terrifying, malevolent face looming above. Sheer horror paralyzes them as they wonder what manner of nightmare they are witnessing. Finn, lost in the surge of his own ability, wears a deeply sinister expression. He is eager to test the limits of his new forbidden spell, and theatrically tells everyone to sit back and enjoy the spectacle. This ability, known as Abominable Vision, is a forbidden magic that plunges enemies headfirst into a twisted realm of pure illusion. It is a power capable of exposing every single one of an enemy's weaknesses, and then exploiting them to inflict the most brutal and personalized torture. Using this, Finn analyzes the clan leader, his perception zeroing in on a chronic injury hidden on the man's shoulder. It was an old wound, caused by the prolonged use of incompatible skill equipment which had slowly but surely damaged his left shoulder over time. This affliction reduced his strength by 5%, his agility by 5%, and the overall effectiveness of his skills by a staggering 20%. Feng found this power utterly staggering. Its detail was so immense that it revealed every weakness with surgical precision. He came to a chilling realization. With this ability, the flaws of any enemy were laid bare before him. He then decided to test its limits, striking Gideon's shoulder, who let out a horrified scream of pure agony. Unable to comprehend what had just transpired, Feng imagined that within this world of illusion, he could become a nightmare. He could relentlessly assault the vulnerabilities of his trapped foes, like a devil toying with helpless prey. Realizing his power was aptly named Abominable Vision, for this very reason, he acknowledged its deeply sadistic nature. Yet, he resolved to use it to exploit his enemy's weaknesses with brutal efficiency. Following the battle, some time elapsed. The captain was speaking on his phone, noting that a considerable amount of time had passed since the incident. With still no signs of the Secret Realm's invasion on the mountain, he declared his intention to investigate personally. He assured his contact that it was no issue, for if the situation turned dire, he could always attempt an escape. In his mind, whether he met his end at the foot of the mountain or at its peak, made little difference. With that thought, he raced toward the peak. Upon reaching his destination, he stood in stunned disbelief at the scene before him. He desperately wanted to know what had occurred there, observing that Gideon, the infamous Blade of Silence, was dead. An A-level wanted criminal, and his entire band of henchmen had been completely annihilated. After the captain relayed this to his squad, the news sent shockwaves. The young woman on his team was astonished, recalling that 4 elite adventurer teams had sacrificed themselves in the hunt for Gideon. And now, against all odds, he was dead. Another adventurer urgently questioned the captain about the conditions inside. Once within the secret realm, the captain's astonishment turned to utter awe. He reported that it was as if a cataclysmic ice storm had flash-frozen the entire domain, leaving not a single monster alive. A concerned adventurer quickly shouted over the comms, asking about the fate of the secret realm's boss, only to hear the captain's unbelievable reply. The Demon King itself had been shattered, a revelation that even left the seasoned female adventurer speechless as the captain described the sight of the frozen sovereign. He needed to confirm the kill, cautiously stepping toward the crystalline prison where the Demon King lay entombed in ice. Suddenly, he stumbled. The adventurer, still on edge, called out, questioning whether the Demon King was truly vanquished. The captain replied grimly, explaining that no loot had materialized, nor had he gained a single point of experience. His conclusion was stark. The boss had already been slain, yet the adventurer remained utterly bewildered. He then asked if the secret realm invasion could still be a threat as the captain knelt beside the Demon King's frozen form. Observing the chilling sight, he concluded that, given the circumstances, such an event was now completely out of the question. He contemplated this, unaware that the Demon King remained conscious, locked in a silent scream of terror at our hero's overwhelming power. Afterward, our protagonist returned to Duan's residence, only to find the place empty. He immediately placed a call, asking if Duan was still pushing himself in the training room and urging him to come back for some well-deserved rest. When Duan finally returned, his frustration was palpable, confessing to our hero that he was hopelessly stuck at level 45. He lamented that his skills were insufficient, feeling the heavy weight of having let his friend down. Feng offered a reassuring smile, telling Duan not to fret and to take a few days to recover his strength. He clarified that the true objective had been for him to fully comprehend the gravity of the situation. He was referring to the challenge within the Sanctuary of Trials, adding that starting next week, he would orchestrate a grueling new training regimen just for him. A wave of profound relief washed over Duan. Realizing Feng hadn't given up on him, he asked with renewed excitement what his friend wanted for dinner. He offered to whip it up immediately, but before our protagonist could even formulate a response, Duan had already darted off, buzzing with anticipation for the intense training to come, leaving Feng to simply admire his friend's infectious enthusiasm. A moment later, he settled into a chair, a cheerful warmth spreading through him. He planned to use the break for a bit of gaming, but as he logged in, he noticed a new message from an acquaintance known as Old Man Lao. A message suddenly appeared from Elder Feng, asking if he wanted to team up to gain some levels, and requesting an invitation to the game. He even claimed to be an excellent tank, a statement that left Leon in a state of disbelief. He briefly wondered if the old man's account had been compromised, but then a second message arrived. This time, a voice message confirmed it was truly Elder Feng, and Leon was delighted to hear the familiar voice of the old man. He had never imagined that the distinguished elder enjoyed playing games, a notion that solidified after they played and won a match together. Leon complimented Elder Feng on his impressive skill, to which the elder replied via audio that he typically played with his grandson. However, he explained that his grandson was currently swamped with university entrance exams and hadn't been playing much lately. He noted that Leon and his grandson were the same age, prompting Leon to send a voice message in return. He proposed they form a trio when the opportunity arose, and the old man readily agreed, declaring it a deal. A smile spread across Leon's face as he thought about Elder Feng, an honorable man with a high-ranking position. He recognized that fostering a relationship with someone of his influence could make his future endeavors significantly smoother. Elder Feng then mentioned that 3 major universities were organizing a joint training camp in the near future. The camp's purpose was to identify and select exceptional students for admission based on their performance. Those chosen would be granted access to abundant training resources, and he added that there were still 2 openings. He then asked if Leon would be interested in claiming one of those spots, a question that made him pause and reflect on the audio message. Leon came to a stark realization. He had initially believed that merely possessing a forbidden spell would be sufficient. He hadn't bothered to concern himself with much else beyond that singular advantage.